I never thought I'd feel so alone in a marriage. Michael and I had been together for 7 years, and somewhere between shared calendars, business trips, and quiet dinners with more scrolling than speaking, we lost the part of us that used to laugh together. He wasn't cruel. He wasn't absent in the obvious ways. But he was gone. Or maybe I was. I'm not sure anymore. He traveled often for work, sometimes a week at a time. At first, I missed him desperately. I'd count the days. Then I started counting the days he was home instead, wondering when I'd get my space back, because being with him started to feel lonelier than being alone. I worked from home. The walls quiet most days. The house felt hollow. I'd try to fill it with music or the hum of the TV, but nothing replaced real presence. And then one afternoon I met Liam. He had just moved in next door. He caught me struggling with a box from my trunk and offered a hand. Just like that. No hesitation. He smiled, bright, warm, unbothered, and said, "Neighbors help neighbors, right?" He stayed just long enough to set the box down in my hallway. I said thank you, and he smiled again and left. I thought nothing of it until a few days later. He was out watering his plants, and I was taking out the trash. He waved and asked how my day was. That was it. No loaded looks, no flirting. But he asked, and he waited for the answer. And I heard myself talking more than I expected. It started small, passing chats. He'd catch me coming back from a walk, and we'd end up talking about the weather, or the local cafe, or books we liked. It was harmless. It was friendly. It felt good to be seen. Michael came home from his latest trip the next weekend. I made his favorite dinner. He ate it distractedly while checking emails. I tried to tell him about the project I was working on. He nodded, said sounds good, and kept typing. I looked at him, really looked at him, and realized how often I felt invisible in his presence. The next day, I saw Liam again. We laughed about something silly, the way my umbrella had turned inside out in the wind, and his laugh was easy, open. He wasn't trying to charm me. That's what made it worse, in a way. He didn't need to try. I wasn't planning anything. I wasn't looking for anything. But the way Liam said my name, the way he noticed things, how I wore my hair, the book in my hand, how tired I looked one morning, it woke something up in me that I didn't even realize had fallen asleep. I told myself nothing was happening, that I was just lonely, that I missed being appreciated, that it was okay to enjoy a conversation, a little attention. And yet, every time I heard his voice over the hedge, my heart beat just a little faster. I started waking up earlier than usual, just to catch a few quiet moments on the porch with my coffee, hoping Liam might be out watering his plants again. I told myself it was just routine, just a peaceful start to my morning. But it wasn't. I was looking for him. He noticed, of course. He always noticed things. Like the way I switched from tea to coffee when I started sleeping less. Or how I paused a little too long when I said I was fine. He didn't push, didn't pry. He just listened. And that felt dangerous in a way I couldn't name. We started talking more. Longer. Deeper. I mentioned I liked old records, and the next day he said he had a few, invited me to borrow some anytime. I never took any, but I asked questions, listened to his stories. He was open, easy to talk to. Unlike Michael, whose answers these days came in the form of shrugs or silence. One afternoon, he dropped off a small box of muffins he said he overbaked. I thanked him, closed the door, and stood there staring at it for longer than I should have. It wasn't about muffins. It was about kindness, presence, attention, things I hadn't felt in my own home in years. A week later, he caught me returning from a walk, looking drained after a long work call. He offered me coffee. I hesitated but said yes. I told myself it was just coffee, neighbors sharing a few minutes. But when I sat down on his porch and we started talking again, I noticed how close we were sitting. Not too close, but not far enough. We didn't touch. Not yet. But there was a moment. A pause between his words, between my breaths, when I realized we were both thinking the same thing and choosing, for now, to pretend we weren't. Later that night, I lay next to Michael, listening to the sound of him snoring softly beside me, and I felt this deep ache. Not for Liam, but for something I'd forgotten how to name. Being heard. Being looked at like I mattered. Noticed for who I was. not just for what I did. I started telling myself stories, little lies to make it all okay. That it was nothing. That I was just talking to a friend. That married people could have friendships. That this wasn't cheating. But deep down, I knew the truth. I wasn't just talking to a friend. I was starting to wait for someone who wasn't my husband. One night, I had a dream that I kissed Liam. I woke up startled, breath caught in my throat, pulse racing. And I didn't feel guilt. I felt panic. Because I didn't want to forget the dream. I wanted to remember it. The next morning, I avoided looking at my reflection. I didn't want to see what was changing in my eyes. Because something was shifting. Something I couldn't take back once it went further. And part of me, the part one was trying to silence, was already hoping it would. Michael left for another 10-day trip. The same rushed goodbye, the same distracted kiss on the cheek. As soon as the door closed, the silence felt heavier than usual. I didn't reach for my phone. I didn't try to distract myself. I just stood there, waiting for a feeling that never came. 2 days passed. I saw Liam briefly, a polite wave from across the yard. No words. The air between us had shifted, charged with everything unsaid. On the third evening, a storm rolled in. Thunder in the distance, sky turning gray. I heard a knock at the door. He stood there holding a small container of soup. Said he made too much. I didn't question it. I didn't hesitate. I just let him in. We ate in the kitchen. Small talk at first, then silence. Not awkward, just full. Everything felt slowed down. Intentional. The power went out halfway through. He lit a candle without asking. I didn't move. I watched the flame flicker and listened to the rain. He asked if I was okay. I nodded. Then I said no. I wasn't okay. He didn't respond with words. Just looked at me like he already knew. We didn't speak for the next few moments. I didn't know who moved first. It just happened. A kiss. Soft, slow, questioning. No pulling back. No resistance. Just heat, years of loneliness unraveling all at once. It wasn't rough or rushed. It was quiet, deliberate. His hands moved like he was learning something sacred. I didn't stop it. I didn't want to. I let go of everything I was supposed to care about. My vows, my guilt, my reasons. I wanted to feel chosen. Time blurred. When it was over, I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel whole. I felt exposed. Liam lay beside me, breathing steady. He reached for my hand, and I let him. But my mind was racing. I had crossed a line I couldn't uncross. The idea of it was now a memory, real and irreversible. I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, heart pounding with something between panic and grief. Not because I regretted what happened in the moment, but because I knew what it meant. I had been needed, touched, seen. But not by the man who had promised to do those things forever. Morning came too fast. I slipped out of bed without a word, dressed in silence. He asked if I was okay. I said I didn't know. He offered breakfast. I declined. I told him I needed to go. He nodded, not pushing, just watching. Walking back to my house, everything felt wrong. My skin felt marked by something I couldn't scrub off. Every step was heavy with guilt I hadn't let myself feel the night before. I didn't cry. I didn't collapse. I just felt numb. Inside, I sat on the couch and stared at nothing. The silence that once felt empty now felt suffocating. I waited for a message from him, but I didn't get one. I didn't send one either. What was there to say? Michael came home late, suitcase in one hand, phone in the other. He kissed my cheek, said the trip went fine, and asked what we should do for dinner. I nodded, said whatever you want, and pretended nothing inside me had shifted. But everything had. I couldn't look him in the eyes for too long. I couldn't sit close to him without feeling like a fraud. He didn't notice. Or maybe he did, and didn't want to ask. Either way, we moved through the evening like actors in a routine. I watched him talk, laugh at something on his phone, completely unaware that just days earlier, I'd been in someone else's arms. And not by accident. Not out of confusion. I chose it. I avoided Liam. I ignored the window that looked out to his house. When I saw him outside, I walked the other way. It wasn't shame that made me avoid him, it was fear. If I saw him again, I didn't trust myself not to want more. And I already knew I couldn't have it. A week passed. Then a note appeared in my mailbox. Simple. One line, handwritten. I miss us, even if it wasn't real. I read it twice. Then again. Then I tore it in half and threw it out. Not because I didn't feel something, but because I did. And I couldn't afford to feed it. At night, I'd lie awake next to Michael, trying to remember what it used to feel like to love him without forcing it. I thought about what we had built, the memories, the good years. Then I thought about the silence, the disconnection, and the way I felt more alive in 2 weeks with Liam than I had in 2 years with my husband. And still, I didn't say anything. Confessing wouldn't fix what was broken. It would just set fire to the pieces. I wasn't ready to do that. Maybe I was a coward. Maybe I was trying to protect something that was already gone. Or maybe I didn't want to lose both of them. So, I made a quiet decision. I booked a therapy session. Just one. Alone. I didn't tell Michael. I didn't even tell myself what I hoped it would fix. I just knew I couldn't go on pretending I was okay. That this marriage was okay. That I was still the kind of woman who could be proud of herself. Liam never reached out again. He must have known the silence was my answer. And I never went looking for him. But some nights when the house is still, I think about him. About the version of me I was when I was with him. Not better. Just more awake. I'm not sure what's next. I'm not sure if I'll stay or leave. But I know something's changed. Not just in my marriage, but in me. And no matter how hard I try, I can't go back to the person I was before I opened that door.